MyoHoRenGeKyo. MyoHoRenGeKyo. Okay, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Thank you for being here. I hope this finds you healthy and safe. We are having a hoot of a time reading this excellent translation of a very important Gosho of Nichiren's from the 1990 dissertation of Dr. Jacqueline Stone. Thank you, Doctor, for making this document available. It's still, even though it's from 1990, it's still extremely relevant today. Where did we leave off? Such are the power and function of the self-practice of this sutra. This is a very important statement to keep in mind as we recite the Lotus Sutra chapters, as we study the Lotus Sutra and supporting sutras prior to it, and certainly Nichiren's doctrine and the methodology, the tools that we have for enlivening our Buddha, the Buddha, in our mind, right? Our ninth consciousness, which you could say we share that ninth consciousness with the entirety of the universe. But let's define consciousness with conscience. English falls apart in this case because though we can identify Buddha as being prior to, within everything, and outside of this universe, which obviously you and I and my pet dog and the flowers in your garden are all a part of, our human consciousness, our conscious mind, is something that exists only within the very brief span of this earthly existence, of this apparatus that maintains and from which a mind emerges. Without this apparatus, no mind. So, we talk about words like suchness, indicating the myriad, infinite potentials of manifestation from this original enlightenment. But only in this human form, in a sentient form, can we conceive of and participate in that very process consciously. We all do, whether we're waking or asleep, we're in it. But are we conscious of being in it, or are we instead completely distracted by the ownership of it, the stress and the anxiety about it? This is the borderline of ignorance or ordinary worldling or ordinary human and enlightened, awakened human. Everything in the universe is the same. What changes is the perspective, the understanding, the penetrating mind that by experiencing that knowing alleviates just the stress and the anxiety. They just melt off. They go away because they're unreasonable. They're doing something that's unreal, unsubstantiatable, empty, right? This is one of the reasons, and this was brought up again by one of us, this thing about the silent meditations. And depending on how you come to this channel, what different schools or teachers you run into, you may call them silent prayers, which I despise, because that completely obliterates the real value of doing the silent meditations. And I'll say again in a very brief way, in case you have still wondering thoughts about that, and you can put those terms in the search on the homepage of this channel, and you'll see a bunch of videos come up about it. But just briefly, because it applies to what we're reading about here, we do this chanting, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, to awaken our Buddha consciousness. We recite the two major aha moments of the Lotus Sutra to pay homage and to integrate our knowledge of self-practice, because that's what the Lotus Sutra is. Not a teaching for others, but a teaching for a self-practice. And so it's not only entirely appropriate, but kind of a nice way. It's like when you eat food, you then have to digest it, right? Not digesting the food, there's no value to the food. There's no value to eating. So when we chant and then we recite, we have all of this nourishment, this Buddha-ness. We have to turn inward and digest it. What am I actually performing here? What is actually happening with my resolve to chant for Buddha, to recite the words of self-practice of Buddha? So the meditations are an opportunity at the end of a recitation to consider once again the voluminous and complex and interpenetrating wisdom of our practice. This is a moment to reflect on certain fundamental concepts of what we're doing, and in so doing, open the door, open the Gohanzan, our mind, to the particular insights that you have, that I have, that she has, that he has, that are very particular to our own experience of the other 8 consciousnesses and how they support our Buddha wisdom of Buddha experience. It's a wonderful little breather, a digestion of, yeah, I get that. I get it different today than I have in a long time. Or I used to think, but I think now, this. Those meditations are a nice breath of self-samsaric cleansing and insights into how our practice integrates into our daily life. It's kind of an essential, especially in today's life. 1,000 years ago, perhaps, after trying very difficult practices to invoke this idea of Buddha, we'd spend the rest of the day casually thinking about it. Today, we have so many distractions and so many things occupying our Saha world existence that it's easy to forget that we have this huge goal, right? But those few moments of the silent meditations, that's why I call them meditations. They're not prayers. We're not asking for answers from outside of ourselves. That's a heinous word to be using here. It's completely not Buddhist. But if you think of the meaning of meditation, that's always about, unless you know of some strange meditation I don't, looking inward. But the beauty of these meditations is that they're guided. We have a few sentences, a few key words that we can, this second meditation, I really, really got this aspect of it. The Buddha of absolute freedom, what is that? And it may be 1,000 recitations from now that's the one term that jumps out at you out of that meditation, and you go, I get that. And once you get it, it alters everything. They're your particular insights. What a glorious moment to have. But it's hard to internalize recitations of these chapters of ancient verses and sermons delivered by Shakyamuni. That's all well and good. It's a struggle to get the pronunciation and the rhythm, and there's something energizing about it. But what is energizing about it? Those meditations are personal. They're your path in. So they have great value as meditations, right? So, back into self-practice. Here we go. The various sutras, Nichiren starts, or continues, expounded to instruct others, are not endowed with self-practice, right? Everything before the Lotus Sutra was about trying to get other people to understand what he was talking about. This Lotus says, okay, this is how we do it. Self-practice. Thus, they are like a bird attempting to fly in the sky, but with a single wing. Might look funny. Therefore, no one attains Buddhahood through these sutras. They talk all about it, but they really don't tell you how to experience it for yourself. They talk about it like it's something other, right? Do you see this consistent theme throughout Buddhism? This idea of other, which, if you study Buddhism any amount of time, the idea of other is ridiculous. That's the samsaric attachment. That's the distancing from the process. You are the process. Stop it. Right? Now the Lotus Sutra, MyoHoRenGeKyo, opens and integrates the two kinds of practice, self-practice and instructing others. That's Bodhisattva way. And has nothing lacking. Therefore, just as a bird with two wings can fly unhindered, there is no obstacle to the attainment of Buddhahood. This is, again, the perfect and complete practice, right? I'm not reading that out here. We've read this before from Nichiren, from Shakyamuni, from other sutras, from the Lotus Sutra. This is the perfect and complete practice. Because without influencing others, what are you? You're a hermetically sealed unit. That's not experiencing Buddhahood. That's experiencing isolation. The chapter on Bodhisattva Medicine King established by means of 10 analogies the relative merits of the power and function of self-practice and of instructing others. The first simile states to this effect, quote, the various sutras are like streams, while the MyoHoRenGeKyo, the Lotus Sutra, is like the great ocean, and so forth, end quote. In reality, the many streams that are the sutras for instructing others flow night and day without interruption into the vast ocean of the Lotus Sutra, right? All the previous teachings are preparatory to lay out a goal, an idea, a way of understanding our own human minds, our existence in this Saha world, so that at the point where we can self-enlighten, self-practice. We have enough foundation of thinking that we can, with a single invocation, do it. Self-practice. Not an ignorant self-practice, a learned self-practice, right? This is why we don't practice earlier practices, because they're all training, right? This is game day. You've been running the laps and running the plays and throwing the ball to one another and cooperating. But today's game day. Today's game day. Every single thing you do today has impact on everything else. If you don't kick the ball right, you don't catch the ball right, you don't move with the other players in a certain sequence of timing, then all of that learned stuff doesn't win anything. Only on game day does it matter. Do you perform correctly, well, on game day? Self-practice. Each individual is a self-practice. The chapter on Bodhisattva King, blah, blah, blah. The first simile states, the teaching of self-practice. So right there he says, interruption, into the vast ocean of the Lotus Sutra, the teaching of self-practice. Yet, even though these streams flow into it, the ocean neither increases nor decreases. Interesting. Displaying its inconceivable virtuous function. Because you're not adding to anything, you're experiencing something that's already there. You're not extracting Buddhahood from Buddha. You're experiencing what is already there to experience, albeit obfuscated by your mind of attachment, ownership, so on and so forth. But the many streams that are the various other sutras do not, even for a moment, encompass the vast ocean of the Lotus Sutra. That would be silly. Such is the relative superiority of the teachings of self-practice and instructing others. Always the two together. Why is that? Because in this Saha world, it is by instructing others, influencing others, assisting others, that we find out so much more about ourselves. That is self-practice. We only make the distinction because we're human. But any effort we made outside of ourselves, and you can see this in other things besides Buddhism, right? You learn how to make the most wonderful pencil holders out of wood with the equipment that you have. You figured it out, and it's exquisite. And then somebody you meet says, hey, I want to make one of those. And right away you think, can you? Do you know what it takes to make this special pencil holder? Do you? Well, yeah, you just drilled a bunch of holes into the wood. Oh, man. What about splitting the wood? What do you mean splitting the wood? How do you drill the wood? With what speed do you run the drill? What size drill do you provide? Do you know the width of all the pencils? How deep should you make the hole to hold the pencils just so? Well, I don't know. I'll just check it out. I'll just keep trying till I figure it out. Okay. You go ahead. At one day you may arrive at what I already know, second nature. I can show you, but I require that you pay attention so that you actually learn this. And you're going to have to try and fail several times until you can do it the way I'm going to show you to do it. Oh, man, that sounds like a lot of work. And then you sit down and you start showing this person how to make that perfect pencil holder. And you just realize suddenly Well, I've never had to put this into words. Well, how did I come to that solution? Oh my, as you're teaching somebody, you suddenly realize a lot of things you've taken for granted. And now you have to figure out how to explain the thing that you know how to do, but never really thought about. Are you not learning more about yourself? Dang, how did that happen? It's like this with everything. In teaching, we learn more about ourselves. We learn more about the way we learn and teach ourselves, and what's useful in remembering and not so useful in remembering, not only in our own teaching process of ourselves, self-practice, but how to articulate it in a way that makes sense for anyone else to follow it. Suddenly, Shakyamuni's task becomes so much more vast, right? Wow. No wonder he taught the same thing for so many years in chunks until he got to the Lotus Sutra. He was traveling. He was teaching to people of different experience and caste and so on. Wow, teaching is hard. But teaching is also self-discovery. Because so much of our human mind just does stuff under the consciousness radar, right? And we don't know that, don't experience that until we start to have to answer questions about what we do. This is why the Bodhisattva path is so profound. So to those of you who have practiced long enough to feel like you've plateaued, man, I've been chanting for this and this amount of time, and my life has gone through a lot of changes, but geez, for the last 6 months, it feels like I'm just stuck, or maybe I'm going backwards. Stop. Think. You need to find someone to support. You need to finally answer the questions of this other person who's been nagging you for a while. I don't understand what you do or why you do it. It's not for me. Maybe you need to reapproach that person. Somebody who's open to your approach. And if you don't know of one, make one. And start really, really simple. Chant with me. That's all you need to do. The cause is made. There may come an avalanche of questions. One thing I will guarantee you, and don't get nervous about it. There's no point. Yeah, great question. Keep me honest. Help me. Help me teach you so you can teach yourself, so you can do this self-practice. Let's get together. Would you be willing to do this like once a week? We'll get together and we'll just have a bullshit session, and we'll have pizza and we'll chant. We'll start every time we meet. We'll start strictly with chanting for at least 15, 30 minutes, And as we progress and you start to feel like there's something here, then we'll try reciting some of the Gosho, some of the Gongyo, Gosho, some of the Gongyo, the Lotus. That's what I was trying to say. And let's see what happens. Let's investigate together, right? Make yourself equanimous. Don't make yourself, I'm the authority and you will learn from me. Don't do it that way. It's hard to do that way. The truth of it is, that's our goal, equanimity. So start from the very start that way. Chant with me. It helps me. You'd be doing me a favor to chant with me. I'm getting bored, and I don't know why. I need somebody to do this with me for a while. Would you be willing? Do it your own way, but I'm just suggesting, don't do it from a standpoint, I've been doing this for 10,000 years, and I know best. You're not going to learn anything that way, and you're going to get a lot of resistance quickly. Let me know. Yeah. Teaching others. Bodhisattva. Your practice won't be boring. It may challenge you. And so I'll caution you there. Never feel overwhelmed. There's nothing to fear. Those challenges, those questions that make you go, huh? Own that. Own that. Don't be afraid to not know something, because that's what this is about. Knowing more about this self-practice. So I want to encourage you, never feel like teaching others or influencing others is a burden, right? Such is the relative superiority of the teachings of self-practice in instructing others. From one example, you may judge all the rest. The above-mentioned analogies were all expounded by the Buddha. So you already know them, even though you're not conscious of knowing them. So one should not incorporate the words of others, right? I don't need to teach you Buddhism by quoting, I don't know, Mutual of Omaha, a Wild Kingdom. When one grasps their meaning, then the sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime will all be as clear as though reflected in a mirror. There we go with the mirror again. Without the slightest obscurity. In reading this sutra, texts, and its commentaries, who could possibly have doubts? The Lotus Sutra, the MyoHoRenGeKyo, is the document testified to by all Buddhas of the 3 time periods. In other words, conceiving of Buddha in MyoHoRenGeKyo is not a particular person. It's not even a particular time or space. Remember this time issue in Buddhism, right? The document testified to by all the Buddhas. First of all, it was never a document. For hundreds of years, it was oral. But we use the word document because we documented that oral teaching through many languages and different time periods, right? So we refer to it here in this translation as a document. What we're saying is this teaching, right? This Dharma. And testified to by all Buddhas of the 3 time periods, and it's never changed. It isn't evolved. It wasn't, there was a junior Buddha, and then an intermediate Buddha, and then a perfect Buddha, and then a teacher Buddha. No, Buddha is Buddha. Buddha has been here since time without beginning. Because it's about the consciousness of a process that is life. Life, whether you experience it or not, continues. It's still life. We just have this little window of opportunity to go, wow, this life thing is huge. And yet, we get to experience it intimately. With our own little colorations and all of the stuff that goes along with it. But knowing it, being a part of it, makes all of our stresses and conditions or anxieties about the particular experiences we're having negligible. Why am I so worried about the color of the couch? My goodness. I have a place to sit. Isn't that amazing? That kind of way. Therefore, one must not venture to draw on the interpretations of others. Follow the law, not the persons. Boy, we keep hearing this reminder. Don't follow Bob. Don't follow Betty. Don't follow Sylvain. Don't follow Shakyamuni. Don't follow Nichiren. Do follow what all of those people are pointing at. Stop staring at the finger and look at the moon. Not the moon's another object, so analogy. Look at what the moon represents. In other words, the big picture, the entirety of the universe. Take a gander at some photographs of that thing that we're all in. It really depersonalizes you, doesn't it? And it values, at the end of the day, your being able to perceive it. That's what this is all about. Maintain that awe. Recognize Buddha as it functions through you. It is the fundamental purpose for which all Buddhas of the 3 time periods make their advent in the world, and the direct path for all living beings to attain Buddhahood. It's really the same statement said 2 different ways. Think about that. It is the fundamental purpose for which all Buddhas of the 3 time periods make their advent. Pause. There is only one Buddha, and that is the entirety of the process. But it instantiates, it makes its advent in each of you and I, in me, as I invoke it, so too do I participate in Buddha-ness, the suchness of understanding and experiencing suchness all around us, in you, in her, in him, in me, in sister, brother, mother, aunt, whatever. Go on with the sentence. In the world. All the Buddhas make their advent in the world. So this process of life makes its advent in this form on earth, in this world, and the direct path for all living beings in this world to attain Buddhahood. Same thing, flipped backwards. Buddha's Buddha. You either experience it or you do not. Buddha emerges here in the emergent mind of this world because living beings who manifest a mind can attain Buddha. It's like a ping pong game, right? The various schools established on the basis of the sutras for instructing others, expounded during the first 42 years, are the Kigon, Shingon, Daruma, Jodo, Hoso, Sanran, Rishu, Kusha, and Jojitsu schools. He's talking about the schools around him in his day in Japan. Without exception, they all belong within the 8 teachings expounded before the Lotus Sutra, MyoHoRenGeKyo. They are all expedient means. They're all ways to get you to this self-practice, this way of attaining your Buddha-ness in this moment. They are the expedients of, quote, combining, excluding, contrasting, and including, quote, unquote, that entice and lead. There's a lot of things about them that seemed like, participating in a sport. Well, I'm part of an after-school program, and I go do this. That's what they're like. But they don't teach the ultimate realization of being in it. Such is the order in which the Buddhas of the 3 time periods preach their various teachings. You do this, you do that. You make the pencil holder, you get a piece of wood, you get a piece of wood that's like this, not like that, so on and so forth. Confirming this order, they expound their doctrines. This is what gets you this far. This is what gets you this far. Were they to deviate from this order, it would not be the Buddha Dharma, because there's stages to realization. Shakyamuni, the thus come one, think about what that means now. You've heard this before, but now with the understanding you have from all our discussion, thus come one. You arrive at the party through your expedient means, and then arriving and leaving isn't important. It's about being one, equanimity. I get it. There was no arriving. What a silly human being. This was always here. I just turned the light on in the attic of my ninth consciousness. Oh, now I get what's going on. Have you arrived? Only in view of samsaric reality, but what you've arrived at is something that's been waiting for you to understand you're in. What's arrived is your consciousness. Shakyamuni, the thus come one, Lord of the teachings, expounded in his lifetime, likewise confirmed the order of preaching of the Buddhas of the three time periods, not deviating from it by so much as a single character. Quote, now I too, in the same way, end quote, he said, as the sutras state, quote, in the manner that the Buddhas of the three time periods preached a Dharma, now I too, in the same way, preach a Dharma without distinction, the self-practice Dharma. End quote. Were one to violate this order, he would long go against the true intention of all Buddhas of the three time periods. In other words, if you're going to say Lotus Sutra, well, I know that, now I'm going to go practice whatever, Shingon or some earlier practice, you're violating the order of the teachings of the teacher. What do you hope to gain? The founders of the other sects each established his own sect and fought with the Hokke Lotus sect in error among errors, a delusion among delusions. You can't know better than the culminating document by studying and practicing its preparatory teachings. You can't be an excellent quarterback of a football team if what you practice is running. That's only a small part, a preparatory part of what it is to be a quarterback. You see? The Chodaku no Ketsu, the decisions on repudiating the doctrinal studies of other sects of Sano-in, refutes them, saying this. As for the 80,000 Dharma repositories, if one categorizes their forms of practice, they would not go beyond the four teachings, as was demonstrated at the beginning of this writing. The Tripitaka, shared, distinct, and perfect teachings correspond respectively to the vehicles of the voice hearer, learning. The conditioned perceiver, the realization, the bodhisattva, and the Buddha. How then could the teachings and the principles revealed by the teachings of Shingon, the Zen school, Kigon, Shanran, consciousness only, Ritsu, and the two treatises of Jojitsu and Kusha go beyond these four? If your opponent in a debate says that they do, then is that not heterodox and perverse? If he says that they do not, then ask to what his sect aspires, that is, to the fruits of which of the four vehicles. In response to his answer, inquire into and verify the ultimate principle of his sect. Investigate and make your determination in light of the forms of practice based on the four teachings as put forth in our Tendai sect. If the fruits to which he aspires differ from those of our sect, then press him accordingly. In the case of Kigon, for example, in each of the five teachings, there is cultivation of the cause and proceeding toward the effect. Thus, practice at the beginning, the middle, and the end are not the same. From a certain teaching, a certain effect is expected. But if this cause and effect are not those of the Tripitaka, shared, distinct, or perfect teaching, then they are simply not the Buddha's teachings, right? Because they should all be aiming at the same goal. Learn how to run, part of being a quarterback. Learn how to dodge, change, shift directions. That's a whole practice in itself. That's has a goal, has a methodology, and the goal is always measured against the end game, the end goal, being a quarterback. If you practice, I can't make one up right now. I don't know. Okay, you practice air hockey. It's hard to determine how being good at air hockey becomes a valuable skill in being a quarterback. Then that's probably not the teaching of a quarterback. You may find issue with my analogy, but I think you get what I'm saying here. This is what they're saying in this document. You should similarly establish, and so this is directions on how to not just debate others in your practice, your self-practice of Buddhism, but how we debate with ourselves. What am I doing here, right? Again, a useful tool is those silent meditations at the end of recitation, right? Our minds are already prepared to have insight when we do that. We don't do the meditations before we do Gongyo. We do them within because we've already prepared our minds. See, everything uses this form. You should similarly establish matters with respect to such classifications as the 3 kinds of turning of the Dharma wheel, or the 3 periods of teachings. Ask your opponent, whoever that is, to what vehicle he aspires. If he says the Buddha vehicle, then point out that the meditative practice for attaining Buddhahood has yet to be found in his sect. Right? There's a lot of talk and rules and precepts and all of these things in your earlier teachings, but they never get to the point of enlightenment. They all point at enlightenment. Only the Lotus says this is how it's done. This is self-practice. If he says the Bodhisattva vehicle, then point out that there's a difference between the middle way that is identified with the other 2 truths of emptiness and provisional existence as taught in the perfect teaching, and the middle way that is separate from these 2 as taught in the distinct teaching. Demand to know which his sect unfolds. If he upholds the middle way that is separate, respond by saying that there is no effect, i.e. Buddhahood, that can be achieved in the distinct teaching. If he emphasizes the middle way that is identified with emptiness and provisional existence, then press him in the same manner that you did when he said that his sect aspires to the Buddha vehicle. Even if one should happen to recite the mantras, so long as he does not acquire the wondrous teaching of the threefold contemplation in a single mind, right? The 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, then he is the same as a practitioner of the distinct teachings and cannot attain enlightenment to the wondrous principle. He will never feel the suchness. He'll only read about it, right? Fingers pointing. Therefore, in accordance with the highest vehicle to which the other sects aspire, you should attack them from the basis of the principle, i.e., the principle of our sect. So these words in English, attack and principle, these are translations, and really they're not. This is the verbiage of a time of great violence. You could argue we're again in a time of great violence, right? Look at all the shooting deaths and wars and, oh my goodness. So the verbiage around discussing debate can sound pretty violent. But take the word shakubuku, for instance, literally meaning breaking bones. It isn't about grabbing a Christian by the arm and breaking his forearm to get him to pay attention. The wording may sound somewhat like that, or may inspire thoughts like that. I hope not. But the meaning is that in order to educate ourselves, let alone others, we have to break our attachments. We have to break the whole systems of logic that we don't even pay much attention to or even recognize, that make us hold deluded, improper thoughts. And I don't mean improper as what's socially acceptable. I mean improper that keep us bound to our sufferings, our anxieties. There are very abstract mechanisms in our mind that keep us behaving a certain way, and many times we do not have any idea what our basis for thinking certain thoughts is. That's the meaning. That's what we attack, is those fallacies, not the people. The principle of hetu vidya was expounded to counter heterodox teachings. In most cases, it is found in the Hinayana or in the distinct teaching. With respect to the lotus, flower ornament, or nirvana sutras, it is a doctrine to lead the beings toward truth. Thus, it is set up temporarily. This book is so big. Thus, it is set up temporarily in accordance with the beings' capacity. Ultimately, and that's just because if you're going to argue somebody toward understanding, invariably you have to start from what they know. It puts a lot of pressure on you as the teacher to take them from what they know, sometimes to excavate why they know that, in order to break that connection so that you can introduce a new way of understanding and lead them along the path. See, this is the history of Buddhism. Ultimately, it is for the purpose of leading and advancing them to perfect teaching. It encompasses people of the heterodox views and of the lesser vehicle, and causes them to arrive at the true principle. There's that arrival again. Therefore, when you debate, you should abide in the discerning resolve of those who act as the four reliances, and not become attached to this, i.e., to logical argument itself. Moreover, you should contrast other doctrines with your own and determine their rights and wrongs accordingly. So once again, a caution. If you start to take apart somebody's beliefs that are based on either erroneous thoughts or not based clearly on anything, just memetics, avoid getting into a war of words. All that does is either blow things up, more firmly entrench ideas. They'll start to use their messed up thinking like we do to justify things that make no sense, but because we justify them, we think we've made sense, right? Wars of words never lead to anything. When you feel that coming on, maybe it's just best that you chant. Chant for yourself, chant with the people that you're with, however that situation arises. Always come back to chanting. That's the great clarifier, right? Do not be attached to your own views, because your own views, whether you know your experience of Buddha-ness is true, the way you express, the words you use, your inflections, your facial cues, all come from you, a fallible human being. And more than that, and you realize that we're all individual that way anyway, how those are seen and interpreted by others you really have no clue. You may think you look beneficial, and they may see you as a voracious tiger about to eat their head. You don't know how they see the world until, as Buddha says, until Buddhas talk to Buddhas, until you're both chanting Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo and your Buddha mind and theirs is invoked, even though they don't know what that is or how to understand it yet, they will have opportunity to experience and understand differently, right? Just as you did when you started. And don't resent your opponent's views, because you're hearing them through your own filters, and it may not represent at all what they think they're expressing. This is the fallacy of language and words. Always keep your mind, and this is about mindfulness. You want to know what mindfulness means? It's about keeping your mind of Buddha in the forefront, of equanimity. And if you're not sure, or you're feeling dangerously close to being resentful or opinionated or high and mighty, laugh. Please just laugh. That'll release a lot of the tension that's obviously happening, either within you, within them, within both, within the room, whatever. Maybe we should just chant for a few minutes. Yeah? Since other doctrines are for the most part included in the three teachings, there are but few cases where they arrive at the purport of the perfect teaching, because it's not in those teachings. So now back to Nichiren. Such is the evaluation made by Sentoku Daishi. The doctrines established by the various sects are as though reflected in a mirror, without the slightest obscurity. How can scholars of the latter age overlook this and judge the teachings arbitrarily? There's an order to them. There's a timeline. One should carefully study the major categories, which are the three teachings. These three are the sudden, the gradual, and the perfect teachings, and correspond to the three truths that encompass the sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime, his entire corpus. You can't leave one out just because it justifies something different than what the teachings are laid out to do. The two teachings, sudden and gradual, represent the preaching of the first 42 years. The one perfect teaching represents the preaching of the last 8 years. Together, they were expounded over a period of 50 years. Apart from these, there is no Dharma. How could one go astray with respect to this? It's obvious. It's thousands of year-old history, right? In reference to ordinary beings, we speak of the three truths, but when one attains the fruit of Buddhahood, they are called the three bodies. Oh, I'm going on and on. These are but different names for a single thing. Remember all my dialogues on the manifest body, the reward body, the Dharma body? They're really all divisions of the same experience, right? These are but different names for a single thing. That which expounds and clarifies this principle is termed the sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime. When we open and integrate these sudden and gradual teachings to form the single all-encompassing triple truth, we attain Buddhahood. This is called, quote, opening and integration, end quote. It is also called self-practice. So, perfect note to leave this on for today. Whew. There's a lot in this Gosho. And it would probably take several rereadings of this Gosho, not immediately, over time, digest it, chant, and then come back to it and read it again. And different parts of it will go, pink, right? or change. Now I get it. Now that I've read through the whole thing and I come back and I read this, wow, that makes so much more sense. How often have you done that? All right. Talked a long time. Time to do Gongyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Thank you for your practice, for your confidence in your practice, for your continuing support, for your watching this video, whether in one sitting or several. Your participation is absolutely critical to growing this Sangha and having an effect on a very mixed up world right now, which provides us with peace and suchness and security and health, and it influences our friends and neighbors, our relatives, our community. And the more we can push out that energy of influence with ever greater and greater numbers in our Sangha, the more security, safety we will feel, the less challenged by health issues we will feel, the less disinformation we'll fall victim to, right? Part of our de-stressing and de-anxietying is uncoupling just the tremendous amount of crap there is to influence us. We need to push that with our own influence. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Hi. Thank you so much for participating in that mission. Those of you who watch, who listen, who take notes, who download the podcasts, those of you who support us with financial donations, oh my goodness, how could we even communicate without you? Right? You're all a critical part of this Sangha. So thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one as we read through this magnificent Gosho. Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline Stone, for putting this in and on the internet so we can all have access to it. And I will see you in the next one. Now I got to reset the camera and get ready for Gongyo. Bye for now. Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo 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 MyoHoRenGeKyo.
Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Rengekyo Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. HoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo 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 MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Rengekyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. RenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, 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 Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. RenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. RenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. MyoHoRenGeKyo, MyoHoRenGeKyo. Ho ben pondai ni ni ji se san ju san mai an jo ni ki go shai ha chi cho bu chi e jin jin mo ryo go chi e man. Shomon yakashi butsuzo fu no chi cho wi shaga butsuzo shingan yakasan man nakamu shu sho butsu jingyo cho butsu muryo do ho yum yo cho jin myo sho fu man jo ju jin jin mi so u ho sui gi sho setsu i shu nange. Shuju in and shuju hiu ko en gang kyo mu shu ho ben indo shu sho ro di cho jaka sho i shaga nyorai ho ben chi ken haramitsu kai gu soku shari hachi nyorai chi ken kodai jinya murya muge. Jinyu musai joju isai miso uho shari hachin yorai no shuju fumbetsu gyo se shoho ganji nu nane ka shushin shari hachashu yo ganchi muryo muhen miso uho busichi joju shi shari hachu Busho joju dai chikeu nange shi ho yui butsu yo butsu nai no kujin sho ho ji so sho wi sho ho nyo ze so nyo ze sho nyo ze tai nyo ze riki nyo ze sa nyo ze yin nyo ze yen Honmaku gyoto sho wi sho ho nyo ze so no ze sho no ze tai nyo ze riki nyo ze sa nyo ze in nyo ze yen nyo ze ka nyo ze ho nyo ze honmaku gyoto sho wi sho ho nyo ze so riki nyo ze sa nyo ze in nyo ze yen nyo ze ka nyo ze ho nyo ze honmaku gyoto MyoHoRenGeKyo no Raiju Yohan Daiju Roganiji Butsugo Shobo Satsugyu Isai Daishu Shosen Nanchi Nyoraijo Daishi Go Bugo Daishu Nyoto To Shinge Nyoraijo Daishi Go Bu Ubugo Sho Daishu Nyoto To Shinge Sejibo Satsudai Mi Rakavi Shugasho Bukabutsagan Se Son Yuigan Se Shiga Toto Shinju Butsugo Nyose Sambaki Bugan Yuigan Se Shiga Toto Shinju Butsugo Niji Se Son Chicho Bo Satsu Igoshi Ganyo To Taicho Nyorai Hi Michijin Shushi Riki Isai Seken Tenin Gyu Ashura Kai Gon Shakamune Butchushu Jakajigu Kogaya Jofu Onza Odojo Budai Nenzen Nanchi Gachijo Butsu Irai Muyo Muhen Yakusenman Nokanayuta Kohin Yogo Yakusenman Nokanayuta Asogi Sansendai Sensei Kakeshi Unin Machi Mijin Senman Nokanayuta Asogi Kokodaige Ichijin Yose Tokyo Jinsei Mijin Sosen Nanchi Yoi Yunga Se Shose Kaka Tokushi Yui Koke Chigu Shufumi Rakabosa Toku Bakabutsagan Se Son Murya Muhen Hisan Jushochi Yakui Shin Yakishokyu Isai Shoman Yakachi Butsui Muro Chifu no Chiyu Chigo Genshu Gato Ju Ayo Yo Chichi Oze Chichu Murya Muhen Niji Butsugo Daibo Sashu Sosen Nanchi Konto Fumyo Sengyo Nyoto Se Shose Kan Yakachaka Mijin Gufu Chakasha Jini Ijin Ichijini Kogajo Butsuirai Yakusenman Nokanayo Asogi Koji Juzerai Gajo Zai Shishaba Sekai Seppo Kyoke Yaku Yosho Yakusenman Nokanayo Asogi Kokodori Shujo Shosen Nanchi Oze Chugenga Setsunendo Buto Yuone Hanyo Sekai Hoben Fumbetsu Shosen Nanchi Yaku Shusho Raishi Gasho Gai Butsugen Kango Shinto Sho Kanri Don Susho Odo Soso Ji Zetsummyoji Fudo Nenki Daisho Yakabu Genkon Ui Shuju Hoben Setsumi Myoho Noryo Chujo Hokangi Shinso Sen Nanchi Nyorai Kencho Chujo Gyo Oshobo Takoaku Jusa Ise Nin Setsugasho Shuke Samyake Zambo Dainen Gajijo Butsu Irai Kuwan Yakishi Tani Hoben Kyoke Chusho Ronyu Butsudo Sanyo Se Setsusho Zen Nanchi Nyorai Shoen Kyo Den Kai Do That Shujo Tashin Wakaji Koshin Wakaji Tashin Wakaji Koji Wakaji Taji Chocho Gon Setsukai Jitafuko Shoi Shaga Nyorai Nyoji Chiken Sangai Shiso Mu Ushoji Nyakatai Nyakachigakumuzai Se Hijitahiko Hinyo Hi Funyo Sangai Kenno Sangai Nyoshi Shiji Nyorai Myoken Mu Ushakemyo Isho Shujo Ushu Shujo Shuju Yokushuju Gyo Yokoro shoujo senga ni nyaka ni nen hi yu ganji chuju sebo chosa bujiri miso sampai nyose gajo buto irai jindai kuwon jumyo muryo asogi kojo yu fumbetsu shosen nanchi shoujo jumyo konyu mi jinbu bai choshu nengan hi jitsu metadoni ben shogun toshu metadon yorai ise ho ben kyoke chujo cho ichaga nyakabuku ju ose Zengan bingu ge senton dagago yakanyu o ogatomo kemo chunaken norai josai fu betumenki kyoshi ni e endai fu no sho o nanzo shiso Iho ben setabiku toshi shobusu se nankachi gu sho ishaga sho yakanong ninka moryo yakasamano go wakahu ken bata wakafu ken chai chi ko gasa segon Kogen Shiju Toto Monyo Sego Hito Sho O Nanzo Shiso Shinne Rembo Katsugo O Butsu Benzu Sengan Seko Nyorai Juifu Jitsu Metsu Nigan Metsudo Uzen Nanchi Sho Butsu Nyorai Kaiji the Fugo Hinyoro Ichi Eso Datsu Myoharen Ho Yakuzenchi Jubyo Gonin Tashoshi Sokunyaka Juni Junaichi Yakachu I Uji En Onshi Yokokashoshi Ogo Onta Doka Yaki Hatomonan and then Nuji Zeji Gobu Shoshi on daga waka shichahanshin waka fushi sha yoken gobu kaidai kangi haiki monjin zennan nongi gato guchi go bukataka yaki genken kuryo kyochi chumyo kuno nyo ze esho kyobo guko yakusho sikiko mimi kai setsuku sakatoshi wago yoshiro bukuni sa zegan shidai ro yakushiki go mimi kai setsuku sakanyoto ka baka shakujoku no mubu chugen go chochi chu Shikigo guko sakaben bakashi byojin joyo yoshi shinja kenga burai suya kangi manjingu jakajibyo nenyo go yakani fuko bakasho wishaga doke jinyo shippan chinko oshiko shikiko yakani ifumi Shishi kamini dokasho chu shinkai tendo sui gengaki gusha kuryo nyose ko yakani fuko bukugakon to setsa hoben ro bukushi yakasoka se ganyo to tochi Zekoro yakakon ruzai shinyoka shu bukamotsu fusai sasekyo ibushi takuku kenshi gengo nyobu ichi Mambu hai sho shindai uno nisa zenen yakabu cha sha jimin gato no kenkugo koncha saga onso takoku chi ui koro mubu jiko joi hiken Shi yakashiki ko mimi sakushu bakashi dakabyo kaya gaba manchi shichi chokashai jinben raiki genshi Shosen nanchi o I unga ha uni no se shiro I komo zaifu hocha se sambutsu gonga yakanyo ze jobutu irai. Hyakasenma nakanayu ta asogi ko I shujo I hoben riki gondo metsudo yakamu uno nyoho setsuga komo kasha niji se son yakuju sensigi ni setsuge gon. Shoko shumuryo hakusenma nokosai asogi josepo kyoke mushu akushu shoro nyu obutsudo nirai muryo ko ido chujo ko hobengen nehan Shusi seppo gajo ju oshi icho jindu rikido tendo suzo shigan ni fuken shuken ga metsuro koku yoshari genkai renbo ni shoketsugo shin Shichijiki inu nani shinyo kenbutsu fuji jakijim yoji gagu suso kusutro du zengaji go chuzo josai chifu metsu iho benriko Koku shujoku gyo shingo shagabu ohi chu isetsumu johon yoto fumanchi tani ga metsudo ga kencho chuzo motsuzai oku kai kofu ingenshin Ingo Shinrenbo Nai Shitsui Seppo Jinzu Rikinyo Se Owa Sogi Kojo Zairo Ju Senkyu Yocho Chusho Shusho Kenko Jindai Kasho Choji Tenin Joju Manon Rinsho Do Kakuchuju Ocho Gan Hoju Dake Ga Shujo Choyu Rakusho Tengaku Tenku Josa Shugi Gaku Umandara Ke Sambataku Daishu Nishu Kensho Jinu Fujo Kunyo Nyose Sitsuju Manse Shosai Shujo Iyakugo Inen Ka Sogi Kofu Mansan Bomyo Cho Uchuku Doku Sogai Kengai Shinsai Shini Seppo Wakaji Ishi Shu Setabata Muryo Kunai Kembusha I Setabata Nanchi Gachi Rikinyose Yumyamu Shukoku Shugosho Tokanyoto Uchi Chamoto Chichogi Toranyo Yojin Butsugo Jippu Konyo Wizen Hoben Ichi Oshiko Zizai Niganshi Kushoku Genshai Bambu Tendo Jizai Niga Metsu Ijo Kengako Nisho Kyoshi Shin Ho Ichitakago Yokoda O Akado Chuga Chochi Chujo Gyodo Fugyodo Zuyo Chokado Jizazen Nigaryo Shujo Tokanyu Mujodo Sokujo Jubushin Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo 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 MyoHoRenGeKyo Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Namu Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. 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 Congratulations. Thank you, everyone.